everyone. I'm here today with Dr. Adeyemi Adetula. He's a Nigerian social psychologist and faculty member at Alex Ekwueme Federal University in Nigeria. His research interests include social behaviours and big team science and replication. Dr. Adetula has been visiting us in Edinburgh today, for the past few days, and telling us about his work. He was most recently awarded the Mission Award from the Society for the Improvement of Psychological Sciences. And I can say that from the talks and interviews and chats that he's given here, this was very well deserved. So I'm delighted that Dr. Adetula found time in his schedule to talk to me. Thank you. And thank you for coming to Edinburgh to share your work.
Yeah, thank you, Swiley, for the wonderful introduction. I'm happy to share thoughts.
Great. Can you start by telling us a little bit about why you chose to study psychology?
Okay, so this would be my sort of like childhood story. Actually, my dad is a psychologist, so I get exposed to a lot of psychological texts when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. So from there, I took interest in knowing more about human behavior. So growing up, I have the option to do psychology and some other social sciences courses, but I mean, my instincts and my readiness to want to do something in psychology, like it was an easy decision for me to make to do psychology. For you to know, like from what you said, I did my BSc and Masters in psychology in Nigeria. Then to know more, so the idea is for me to move to a more advanced society so that I can learn psychology. And I did my PhD at the University Grenoble-Alpes in France. So I had my PhD and here I am today. So it was a motive from my dad, and I really like to do psychology to understand human behavior. So.
And when you went to the University of Grenoble-Alpes, were there any differences in how psychology is taught and studied to how you learned about psychology in your home universities?
Yeah, maybe not apparent differences, but I see a lot of difference in terms of the methods that we used, especially statistical methods. Similar methods, actually, but not like in-depth, especially meta-analysis was not something that I'm really familiar with, or some of my professors in Nigeria are familiar with. But other statistical tests, correlation, test of difference and variances, we are familiar with that. So in terms of method, that is the major one, meta-analysis. That was not very popular in Nigeria. Also, the way we looked at our research questions is a bit different. Most of the research questions that I was familiar with in Nigeria are based on almost problem solving sort of like direction. But when I got to France, the University of Grenoble-Alpes, I started seeing a lot of professors thinking in theoretical direction, and so that was a bit of a big shift in the way I see psychology and how psychology is done when I compare with Nigeria. And also, even in terms of diversity, the research questions that most of myself and colleagues and some students is to see the diversity or the variance in behavior. When we talk about psychology in Nigeria, we try to see if this is we try to compare and see, is this the same way psychology is seen in the Western world? Because it looks like we want to know, like, culturally, what are the differences that are there, because sometimes it's difficult for us to apply some differences that we see, or some method or procedures in the local population. So the major question that we do ask, one of the major questions is the cultural differences or variances that might exist between a population like Nigeria and so in the Western world. So those questions are not very prominent in what I see in University Grenoble-Alpes. It's majorly focused on their own population, and very few people ask questions outside.
I see.
Uh,
So it's quite locally focused on French populations living in France.
yes.
I see. So when you were studying psychology, one of the things you talk about a lot now is centering Africa and centering African theories and philosophies. At what point did you start to notice the lack of African voices in the things that you were being taught in Nigeria, or were there African philosophies being taught at the time you were doing your undergraduate and masters?
Yeah, so during my undergraduate and masters, the question of centering African psychology was not maybe not what I was interested in, and
Okay.
then I didn't have professors that are really heavy on that. So the question of now that I'm trying to focus on why we should start including Africa in the mainstream psychology, this started when I during my PhD, because one of the questions my PhD wants to answer is to include Africans in mainstream psychology, especially using the open science practices and tools. So then at that point, looking at the literature, the text, I discovered that Africans are underrepresented to the tune of like less than 1% in the mainstream psychology. And so that's raised a lot of question. What's happening? Why is Africans are not represented appropriately, considering that Africa is about 18% of the world population, and just about 1% of the sample of thought of researchers involved in research globally. So then that led me to the question of maybe we have to start thinking a lot about how to involve Africans in psychology. And that means that Africa, on its own terms, needs to start bringing to bear its own concepts, its own ideology methods, to in a way contribute to global psychology. So it was during my PhD that I started thinking deep and taking actions about centering African psychology.
So there have been lots of psychologists, particularly from North America and kind of Anglophone Europe, who have collaborated with institutions in Africa to develop their theories. Do you think that's done enough to improve the visibility of African theories?
No, but I think we can appreciate the efforts, because I've seen some efforts to try to understand how to involve Africans, or what method or epistemologies that we have in the African continent. But I think we can do more. We can do more. It's a good start, but very slow, because this has been happening for a couple of years, like back, and just few people here and there, few scanty work on Africa and try to try to project Africa globally. But I think we can move in pace. We can try to start doing a lot of work in this direction, especially now that the world is it's more like a global village. You can naturally reach out to people in any part of the world. We have the internet now, and we have researchers that are actually more visible right now from the African continent that we can reach out to and work with them, involve them in this sort of projects. For me, it's a call for researchers in the Western world to take up more, to be more active in this direction, to work with African researchers. And I think it's very important for psychology, because now we're talking about a psychology that should be generalizable to all humans, and not just a narrow subset of humans from the US and Europe. So I think there's a lot of things that we need to do, a lot of steps we need to take. But for now, unfortunately, it's not. We are not where we are supposed to be now in terms of involving Africans.
And how can Western researchers involve Africa and African researchers in a way that doesn't fall into the traps of helicopter psychology?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a great question. For me, I do have this terminology I use, that they should be open-minded, because most times there are biases and prejudice that sort of stop people to want to look beyond their own practices. So I don't want a Western researcher going to Africa and thinking already that, well, I'm not sure I'm going to see anything. I think the best approach is to be open-minded, that definitely there is something out there that I can get and that can improve the way I do my own science. So, and if we have the open mind to reach out to them, then of course we need to understand some of the barriers that are there. So a lot of researchers in Africa don't really have the time, because they have a heavy workload, because they have to teach, and the ratio to students is a big gap. A lot of them have to supervise projects, and they are doing this in a poor facility, where sometimes they don't have computer, sometimes the internet, or they don't have access to literatures where they can help themselves to understand some of these concepts. So if we have that in mind, that we are dealing with people that are really struggling in terms of resources, and we want to understand them, then we can look to use some platforms, maybe international organizations or international scientific associations that we have around, to reach out to them. I'm pretty sure there are researchers available to help network others, African colleagues, to researchers from the West. Myself, I've done this a lot. I've heard a lot of people from different countries that are willing to reach out to African researchers, that they will look to work on a specific concept, and I don't pass those kind of opportunities, because I know it's a great opportunity to again network an African researchers, and so that they can build up a collaboration in the future. So maybe we can open up more in the West. So some of what I've campaigned for is to have like an exchange, that will allow somebody from Africa. And we have to bear in mind the visa restrictions are there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but because we cannot stop trying, we know the system can sometimes rig against like researchers from Africa because of some of these issues. But we just have to keep trying to get them involved. Myself, I say that it's the same story for me. That I was in Nigeria for a long time before I came to the university, Grenoble House, and it was through one or two researchers that really believe that they can put in the efforts to make sure I come around and learn some of this stuff. And here I am today. I'm advocating for stuff like that. So we should not be discouraged by the system. We should be open-minded, and we should believe that there are researchers out there in Africa that are ready to work. And we also bear in mind that there are barriers for them, and so it's not going to be like a walk in the park for anyone to get it done. And we can always use all these networks around to reach out to them.
And for people who are listening to this today, who think, I would love to do that, I want to reach out to researchers in Africa and to learn more about their concepts, are there websites? What sorts of resources are available? And we'll put those in the links to this video.
Yeah, I can provide a few. So majorly there are scientific organizations from Africa. Yeah, there are some that are quite visible. I think the Nigerian Psychological Association is a visible one in Nigeria. We can reach out to, through this platform, reach out to researchers, psychologists in Nigeria. There are so many associations like this Psychological Association. I know we have some, like in South Africa, one that is good, that is working, Ghana. So I've used some of this platform myself. uh, Algeria, Egypt, Morocco. So they have some of these platforms. Like I think they are there on the internet, but yeah, like I said, sometimes it's difficult to reach out because of when you check their workload. Some of them just feel so tired about
Yeah.
So, but the the advantage or the way I think we can get to them is to not stop trying to reach out to them.
Good.
We cannot stop trying to reach out to them. That's what pays off at the end, because it's not like a researcher in the Western world. When you have your contacts out there and you have your system working, you have power, you have internet, you have the computer.
Yeah.
So people can send you email and you can actually get that within 1 or 2 days and you can read that. In Africa, it could be like you send email and they don't even get to see it like days because of some of these facilities. Also, I do advocate for big team science sort of like initiatives. Some of them are quite open to researchers from different parts of the world, and they have on their platform members from these different countries. One example is the Psychological Science Accelerator, and it has presence in a lot of countries, even in some few countries in Africa. And I think we can reach out to them and say, well, I have a project, and this project is focused on some African population, and do you have somebody or a member that would be interested in working with me on this project? I'm pretty sure they can already give them a direction, a contact. Myself, I'm part of the Psychological Science Accelerator, so I do know that I get a request like this from this platform, and some people just have my contact and they from there and contact me directly, and so yeah, I will leave it at that. So, but
there's resources out there,
yes.
And once we know where to look.
Yes, and also if for us to understand what research works from Africa, that is the African Journal Online. I feel like it's almost like a reservoir for African psychological research, or beyond psychology actually. And I mean, there are authors there that we can reach out to. So, and there's a number of other avenues to get to find somebody in Africa that is doing specific work. But like I said, I'm just encouraging us to be more patient with when you're trying to reach out to them.
Good.
Because yes, it's very difficult for them to. It might take time for them to respond to you.
I think that's really helpful for people listening to this. That if they don't get a response within a week, that doesn't mean someone's not interested. It just means they can't access their emails, or they're completely snowed under, and it's going to take a time that they can see that message.
Exactly, that's the point.
You mentioned your work with big team science. I know another one of your research interests is open science. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you think open science is going to be helpful in promoting African psychologies?
Okay, so I'm a big advocate of open science. Yeah, so one is access to literatures. So part of the open science is the open access idea that research should be open to people, to all researchers. Okay. The big advantage there is for African universities. Sometimes they can subscribe to paid word journals. So if we have like open access one, it means they can have access to read literature from contemporaries all over the world. Also, aside from the open access journals, we have the preprints. So the preprint allows you to share your own pre-reviewed materials. So if you have this sort of like avenue to share that, even African researchers that can break through like maybe journals that are mostly keepers we have gatekeepers from the West, and they can't break through, but regardless they can still share some of these works and via preprint servers. So that is one advantage for the open science. The other one, open science allow for collaboration, where people can have profiles. For example, the open science framework, they can create a profile where people can and they become instantly visible to people that are interested in open science, sort of like researchers. This gives them the advantage to collaborate on research works and allow them to share their own materials. Okay. Also, there is the open source materials or educational materials that they can access, because open science, again, if you're able to license it properly and you can distribute it and you allow people to use your materials, you can make those materials. It can be codes, it can be instruments, it can be literature or reports, or some materials that you think could be valuable for somebody else somewhere around the world. And if they are part of this open science movement, so they can see these materials, they can access it, they can access maybe an instrument that will be useful for their own kind of research. So there are a lot of benefits to African researchers joining the open science movement and getting involved actively. Myself, I've written a lot of communications about why Africans should be part of the open science movements. One is about the synergy between the credibility revolution and human development in Africa, because we believe strongly that there is a venue for Africans to use infrastructures built by open science and use that to their advantage. So this allows them to quickly close the capacity gap between them and their Western colleagues.
I see.
Yes.
Yeah. So imagine you can travel in time, 20, 30 years. What would you like the discipline of psychology to look like? How would you like academic psychology or psychology to be?
Okay. So you mean by that, you mean like generally, like global?
Both generally and maybe specifically for Africa.
Yeah, so I think bottom line is we need psychology that consider all humans, not a subset of humans. Right now, what we have is like psychology from the US majorly, and that is not psychology that covers all humans. We need the entire globe to be. We need to understand people from every part of the world. Even if it's a particular concept, we want to understand how this concept relates to human behavior or every part of the world. So we need what we call a global psychology, a psychology that touched on everyone. But right now we are not having that. So that would be the kind of psychology I would think I would have maybe tried to engineer 20 years ago, or I would like to see in the future. Psychology that's even for different regions have their own indigenous sort of psychology, strong one, and they are ready to test for cultural differences, or if there's any cultural variation somewhere to what they think humans would like humans' behavior. For example, we can take maybe personality theory. You can have a strong personality theory from your own base. Let's say in Africa, like we have a strong build a local personality theory, and we can try to export this to different part of the world, not the one that is strong somewhere, but the other part is not that strong, and we try to almost like force that on the other population to try to explain other people's behavior. So what we need is psychology that is strong for different countries, if that is possible. And we start to export from different countries and have like a centralized, integrated sort of like a theory that can explain human behavior, their differences, their variation based on the particular maybe theory.
That's great. Just finally, if there are people listening to this who want to learn more, what are there any papers or authors that you think they should look to?
Learn more about...
learn more about centering Africa in psychology and the need for it. Yeah,
of course, there are authors Enrich, it's one.
The Henrik Heine
Yes.
Neuromuseum.
Yeah, so that's a big one because that's a particular author and its work on the greatest people, and I like it's really open up what we are mostly discussing today because it's so impactful and like open up the whole conversation. There are also scholars. I mean, maybe not at the top of my head. I didn't have some like this. There is Elmaya, Dr. Elmaya. So yeah, so she's doing a great job along this line. There is Dr. Patrick Fosha. So Patrick Fosha is heavy on victim science, and so the idea of the victim science is to distribute tasks, and everybody can contribute based on their strengths, and we can quickly do a lot of work that a single, even large project cannot accomplish, and reach out. So these are maybe the few ones, but I know there are a lot of people doing great work out there about generalizing psychology, and making psychology like a more global perspective.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure many people are going to find this interview very interesting and helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.